Let's take a look at how Israel launched a coordinated attack using both drones and fighter jets to hit the Syrian military headquarters in Damascus. The strike specifically targeted the entrance of the Syrian Defense Ministry in areas near the presidential palace, involving both drone assaults and missile or airstrikes. These were highly precise attacks that caused extensive damage, triggered large fireballs, and struck command centers believed to be directing operations against the Druze minority in southern Syria. It all began with a relatively small skirmish. The immediate trigger for the violence was an incident in which members of a Bedouin tribe attacked and kidnapped a Druze merchant on the Suez-Damascus highway. What might have remained a local dispute quickly escalated into a broader conflict, with armed clashes breaking out between Druze militias and Bedouin tribal fighters. The situation deteriorated rapidly, leading to a series of retaliatory kidnappings, mortar shelling, and intense gun battles that left dozens of people dead. Amid the growing chaos, Israel stepped in with a renewed demand that Syrian regime forces withdraw from the Druze majority province of Sweda and the neighboring Dar region. The Israeli government views these areas as critical to maintaining a buffer zone near the Israeli-occupied Golden Heights, and sees the continued presence of Syrian troops and militias as a direct threat to its national security. This effort has included the occupation of certain areas in southern Syria near the Golden Heights, and an ongoing series of airstrikes targeting Syrian military infrastructure and weapons depots. Israel's objectives are clear: to prevent the transfer of Iranian weapons to Hezbollah and Lebanon, to create and secure buffer zones along its borders, and to neutralize any hostile forces operating within Syria that could pose a future threat. But before we move ahead, let's try to understand the complex sectarian groups in super simplified animation to understand the root cause of the war and the divisions among them. The Syrian government forces, the Kurdish-held Syrian Democratic Forces, Hayat al-Sam, and the Turkish-aligned Syrian rebel forces. On November 30th, 2024, opposition forces captured more territory, expelled government forces from villages in eastern Idlib, and began advancing toward the M5 highway, a strategic road leading south to the capital, Damascus, approximately 300 kilometers, which is around 186 miles away. As we all know, it is no secret that the Syrian government forces relies on Russian military equipment from tanks to artillery shells, not to mention the Air Force from MiG-29 to B helicopters, while the rebels primarily use pickup trucks and tube-launched missile or TOW missiles to fight against tanks. More details all in the video ahead. To provide a clearer picture of Syria's complex and fragmented conflict, it is crucial to understand the territorial control among the key players on the ground. Four primary factions dominate different areas of the country, each backed by varying external powers and ideologies. The Syrian government forces, marked in red on many conflict maps, represent the Bashar al-Assad regime's primary military apparatus. These forces are supported by the National Defense Forces, a pro-Gov-owned paramilitary group. The Assad regime also benefits from the significant backing of Russia, Iran, and Hezbollah, whose combined efforts have fortified and sustained its control over large swaths of territory, particularly in central and western Syria. The Syrian Democratic Forces, SDF, represented in yellow, consists largely of Kurdish fighters. This group, backed by the United States, controls much of eastern Syria, including areas rich in oil reserves. The SDF has played a critical role in the fight against ISIS and continues to manage regions under its control with the support of its international allies. HTS and other allied rebel factions shown in green operate primarily in the northwest. HTS, an evolution of the Al-Nusra Front, previously aligned with Al, until severing ties in 2016, remains a dominant force in this region. Despite internal divisions, HS maintains significant influence over the territories it controls. In the north, Turkish-backed rebel forces, including the Syrian National Army, hold ground along the Turkish border. Turkey has supported these groups as part of its broader strategy to counter Kurdish influence and establish a buffer zone. These areas, often marked in different shades of green, reflect Turkey's active involvement in the Syrian conflict. Meanwhile, these patches of the Islamic State or DA-dominated territory still persist in some isolated desert regions, a stark reminder that the group's threat has not been entirely eradicated. Finally, in the south, additional rebel groups maintain a presence, and the Golan Heights adds a further layer of Complexity. Israel claimed sovereignty over this territory, citing its capture during the 1967 Six-Day War, while Arab nations and the broader international community often regard it as occupied territory. Understanding these dynamics is key to grasping the intricacies of Syria's civil war. If you have any thoughts or additional questions about the situation, feel free to share them in the comment section below. On November 27th, Syrian opposition armed groups launched a sudden and audacious offensive that took many by surprise. This operation was spearheaded by Hayat al-Sham, commonly abbreviated as a TS, known for its strategic capabilities. HTS and its allied rebel forces in northwest Syria swiftly advanced through the western countryside of Aleppo. Their rapid progress underscored the intensity and effectiveness of their offensive as they overcame resistance with remarkable ease. The momentum of the attack did not weigh in Aleppo. Instead, the rebel forces pushed further south and southwest, extending their campaign into new territories. This continued offensive brought them significant gains, including control over areas in Hama province. To simplify this complicated civil war, let's draw a line and divide each side. On one side, Iran, Russia, and Hezbollah support the Bashar. On the other side, the US government supports the Kurds. Just below, we have another group, Turkey, Saudi Arabia, and Qatar, which support the rebel groups. Then there's ISIS, and everyone seems to be fighting against them. However, Turkey is also fighting against the Kurds, which creates a very confusing scenario. The Israel Defense Forces have conducted approximately 400 strikes, targeting key military installations and infrastructure across Syria. These operations have included strikes on airfields, military vehicles, anti-aircraft weapons systems, and arms production facilities, some of which are suspected of being involved in the development of chemical weapons. The strikes have primarily focused on strategic locations such as Damascus, Homs, Tardis, and Palmyra. One of the most critical targets was the Soviet-era missile boat stock at the naval port of Latakia. The IVF view these vessels as a significant potential threat to Israeli security, given their proximity to Israel's coastline. More details, all in the video ahead. Let's take a look at why Israel is attacking Syria, starting the scenario. 1. These strikes are part of a broader campaign with the Israeli military, reporting that it has carried out more than 400 airstrikes against military assets belonging to the Bashar al-Assad regime. These operations have targeted locations in Damascus, Homs, Tardis, Latakia, and Palmyra. The strikes are reportedly aimed at neutralizing threats and preventing the transfer of advanced weaponry to hostile groups. Israel asserts sovereignty over certain territories it captured during the 1967 Six-Day War, including the Golden Heights. However, the claim is widely disputed by Arab nations and the broader international community, which generally regard these areas as occupied territories under international law. One of the key elements of Israel's strategy in the region involves the establishment and maintenance of a buffer zone, formerly known as the Area of Separation. This demilitarized zone was established as part of the 1974 ceasefire agreement between Israel and Syria following the Yom Kippur War. The buffer zone serves to physically separate Israeli and Syrian forces, reducing the risk of direct military confrontation. In recent years, dynamics around the buffer zone have evolved. As Syrian government forces have withdrawn from areas adjacent to the buffer zone, extremist rebel groups have become more active. Israel views these groups as a significant threat and has taken measures to prevent attacks originating from their positions. The creation and enforcement of the buffer zone are thus critical to Israel's broader security strategy in the region. This strategy aims not only to counter the immediate threats posed by extremist groups, but also to limit the influence of Iran and Hezbollah, which are closely allied with the Assad regime. In Scenario 2, Israeli planes carried out airstrikes targeting multiple major Syrian military air bases, significantly damaging critical infrastructure. The strikes focused on air bases housing dozens of advanced aircraft, including MiG-29 and Su-22 jets. The targeted facilities include Qamishli Air Base in northeastern Syria, Shinsha Base in the countryside of Hams, and Akraba Airport southwest of Damascus. These airstrikes were strategically aimed at neutralizing threats posed by the Su-22 aircraft, which are classified as fighter bombers. These planes pose a significant danger to Israel's F-16 fighters and the security of the Golden Heights, where they could potentially counteract any advancements by the Israel Defense Forces. Additionally, the Israeli Air Force struck helicopter bases that house attack rotorcrafts, such as the Mi-24 and Mi-28 Havoc. These helicopters play a critical role in providing close air support for Syrian ground troops, using their formidable firepower to suppress enemy forces and bolster efforts against rebel advances. In Scenario 3, the Israel Defense Forces targeted seed-land missiles from their Navy ships and launched a precise strike on the ports of Alba and Lat. These ports are one of Bashar al-Assad's Syrian navy that can still be highly effective if used against Israel. At the time of the attack, 15 vessels were docked at the ports. The assault caused widespread devastation, completely destroying or severely damaging all these ships. It is believed that the majority of the targeted vessels were Ozaklas missile boats known for their fast speed and heavy armament. These vessels, once considered a formidable naval asset, now lie in ruins, preventing the rebels from using them against Israel. The reason behind the Israeli action is likely rooted in their desire to neutralize these ships, given the strategic implications as seen on the map as coastlines within proximity to Syrian-held territories, and just to the south lies Israel. Despite being from the Soviet era, these missile boats remain a potent threat capable of inflicting significant damage on Israeli naval assets. In a hypothetical scenario, these vessels could depart from the Latakia naval port and reach the Israeli coastline within a few hours, potentially evading detection and launching a surprise attack on the IDF Navy or its naval ports. We also make original engineering content, so please subscribe and hit the notification bell for more videos.